Hello, Coach Erik Hajer with you. Today I'd like to talk to you about breaking through limiting habits and behaviors for good. Question: have you ever found yourself engaging in a habit that you knew intuitively was not serving you, however you felt as if you had no willpower and no control over the situation? Well, most of us have, and as a result, we rely on willpower to hold us back from engaging in the future. Oftentimes it works for a period of time, but then over time we find ourselves slipping right back into those old habits and behaviors. The reason for that is this: all human behavior is governed by our need to avoid pain or our need to gain pleasure. So depending upon what you've associated with the behavior or the habit, have you associated more pain or more pleasure to that? Oftentimes when we associate more pleasure and instant gratification to the behavior or activity, we tend to override our willpower and act anyway. So the question on the table is, how do we neurologically anchor ourselves in such a way that we can get emotional leverage and break through for good? What I'm going to talk to you about today is a principle called neuro-associative conditioning. So ultimately what that means is, when we attach massive amounts of emotional pain to a habit or behavior that we want to break through, and massive amounts of pleasure to the new habit that we're going to put in place of our old habit, we begin to hardwire ourselves to move towards that new habit and away from that habit that's been limiting us. So what I'm going to invite you to do is think about a limiting habit or behavior that has been plaguing you for years perhaps. And I'm going to ask you a number of questions. The goal here, in terms of conditioning ourselves to associate massive amounts of pain to this behavior, is to really feel it viscerally, to really feel it deep within your soul. So the question I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, the series of questions, is this: what is this behavior / habit costing me? And really feel it. What is it costing me in terms of my relationships? In terms of my relationship with myself? In terms of my health? In terms of my well-being? How are you feeling as I'm asking you this? Really get connected. What is this costing me in terms of how I really see myself, how I want to live my life, who I am? So now let's take it a step further. What is this going to cost me 1 year from now in terms of my dreams, in terms of my professional life perhaps? What is this costing me in terms of my relationships, my overall health, my well-being? Let's push it out further. What is this costing me 5 years from now? How much joy has been robbed from my life? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what does this cost me in terms of my relationships, in terms of my health, in terms of my well-being, in terms of my happiness, in terms of my joy? Notice how it feels when I ask you these questions, and when you ask yourself these questions. This is an activity where we're associating massive amounts of pain. For this to work, you must feel this deep within your soul. So after you watch this a few times, I'm going to invite you to write about this and really spend some time getting clear on how this habit has and will continue to rob you of your happiness. The more emotional pain we can associate with this habit and behavior, the more emotional leverage we're going to have in terms of moving away from that habit when we feel as if, we need this habit to move us into instant pleasure. It's no longer going to be pleasurable because it's anchored to intensive emotional pain. So once we've gained emotional leverage by associating massive pain to the habit or behavior that's limited us, our goal now is to take a new habit, a new behavior, and put it right in place of that old habit and attach massive amounts of pleasure to it. So after you watch this a few times, I'm going to invite you to come up with a new habit, a new behavior that you can use instead of this old habit, old limiting habit and behavior, and ask yourself these questions in terms of gaining emotional leverage and moving towards, energy moving towards. How is this new habit and behavior going to create instantaneous joy, power, and excitement in my life? How is this new habit going to affect my relationships? My relationship with myself? My relationship with my family? How is this going to affect my life in terms of my health, in terms of my well-being? 1 year from now, how is this going to transform the amount of joy and happiness that I have on a daily basis? 5 years from now, how is this going to make me feel? How is this going to transform my family? How is it going to transform my relationship? 10 years from now, how am I going to feel about myself? How much joy will be in my life? 15 years from now, how is my health going to be transformed? How is my physique going to be transformed? How is my professional life going to be transformed? Anchor as much pleasure as you can to this positive, empowering habit. Feel it within your body. The more you feel the pleasure associated with this new habit, the more emotional leverage and moving towards energy you put towards this habit. Once you take action and you start to instill those positive habits in place of the old limiting habits, the goal is to really anchor yourself to them. So what I suggest is, when you take positive action with this new habit, celebrate. Literally do a happy dance. Jump up and down. Maybe it's a yes. Maybe it's a clap. What this does is it neurologically anchors your brain and your subconscious to this new habit. So in closing, there's great power in the science of neuroassociative conditioning to break through limiting habits and behaviors that have been robbing you of joy and robbing you of your dreams. You need to really anchor massive amounts of emotional pain to that habit through those questions that I went over with you. Spend some time really feeling those questions. And then, in place of that old limiting habit, take your new habit and anchor massive amounts of pleasure to it. Again, using those questions. Once you start taking positive action with your new habit, neurologically and subconsciously anchor yourself with a little happy dance, with a yes, with a tap, something that signifies to your subconscious some kind of movement that neurologically anchors you to this new empowering habit. So play with this. What I don't want is for you to go out and feel as if you need to judge absolutely everything that you do. If you do this exercise and you find yourself slipping back into your old habit, instead of beating yourself up about it, gain some information, get some data, change things up, and do the exercise again. Over time, through repetition, you will definitely see massive results in terms of moving away from habits that have been robbing you and limiting you, and moving towards habits that bring you massive amounts of pleasure in that moment, as well as move you towards your goals and your dreams. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and remember, the power to transform lives within you. Live fit and be well. Take care.